What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Preacher Girl podcast. My name is Rachel Arner, your host on this show, and this is episode number 4. Today on the show, I have Justin Khoe. He is a YouTuber. His platform is That Christian Vlogger. You should definitely go check it out, subscribe to him. It's a great channel. I love his videos, his content. It's great stuff. But I just want to let you know in advance that this interview, my mic was not on, unfortunately. So I'm so sorry about that. You can still hear me, but I just want to give you a little heads up. But he sounds great. His volume is great. So please definitely listen to what he has to say. He shares some really great wisdom, honestly, here today. Like, great stories. It's overall amazing. So definitely stay tuned for this episode. And I'm sorry about the volume for me. I'm so sorry about that. But I'm figuring this podcasting out as we go. So yeah, stay tuned. All right, guys. So guys, let's welcome Justin. Hey, Justin, how are you doing?
Hey, Rachel, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for taking the time to, out of your busy schedule to spend with us here today. So
of course.
To start off, let's just go ahead and, where are you from?
Where am I from? I grew up in Southern California in a little place called Glendale, which is like the North Hollywood area. Did K through 12 at Glendale Adventist Academy.
Okay, all right, awesome. So California, it seems like a really great place. I've only been over there one time, but I was little, so I want to make it back over there one day. But it seems like a really great place to live.
Oh yeah, it's for me still the place that I want to live. I actually am in the Northwest right now in Portland, Oregon, which many people would say is another great place to live, and it definitely is. And I'm seeing this trend, as a lot of other Northwestern people are, where we're seeing a lot of California people migrating up here because it's cheaper to live. There's a lot of green, things like that. And yet there's something about California. I really love the sunshine and the ability to walk around in tank top and shorts and sandals pretty much any day of the year. And so my heart still is in California.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And Oregon is definitely a place I want to get over to as well. That's super great. So as you know, I mentioned you're a YouTuber. So is that what you do for a living, or what is it exactly that you do for work?
Yeah, I guess I could say YouTube is my full-time gig. I've been doing YouTube now for 3 years, and 2019, which is when we're recording this at least, this will be the first year that I'm actually sustainable on that. So, which means the first 3 years of this, it was kind of done at a sacrifice, mostly at the sacrifice of my lovely wife, Emily. Shout out to Emily. She's been the one that's been paying the bills for the last couple of years, and just kind of we've been trusting God that he would work through what we're doing. And finally, this is the year that it seems like I'm actually going to be able to contribute to our family budget now. So it's exciting. We're kind of stoked about this whole journey.
Yeah. No, that's really awesome. So how did you get started with YouTube? Was there like an aha moment where you're like, oh wow, like I need to be a YouTuber,
Yeah, so I was actually working in Philadelphia a couple of years back, teaching at a Bible college, and my boss at the time came to the staff and she's like, hey, we want you to invest in yourself, and we want to invest in you. And so, long story short, pick a course or pick a subject online that you want to learn about, something that will help you grow individually, and also that will give you a skill that you can bring to the school to kind of serve the school in as well. And so for me, immediately I thought about learning how to do YouTube. And so I purchased a course online, ended up studying that course a little bit and launching into my own YouTube channel because I wanted to study social media and kind of understand this whole thing. And the real impetus behind that was there was one of the students at the school at the time by the name of Michael. He shared with me his story of coming to Christ and, giving his heart to the Lord and all these different kinds of things. And long story short, it was because of a YouTube video. Like, this guy literally became a Christian because of a YouTube video. I'm like, whoa, that's pretty dope. So I wanted to see if there was a way to learn how to do that whole thing so that people like Michael could have a similar experience.
Wow, that's really, really awesome. So it started then in school then?
Well, I was teaching at the school, yes. And as part of my duties as a teacher, I started learning YouTube and applying those things to the school that I was working for, making YouTube videos for the school and things like that.
Okay, wow, that's really awesome. Very cool. So would you say that anyone can be a YouTuber, if they wanted to, or
I want to say like the right answer is yes. Like that would be the feel good answer, but probably not. I mean, not everybody
mm,
has that skill set. I was just in
mm,
New Mexico for a church conference just yesterday, actually, and hanging out with one of my really good buddies. And he was talking about, doing digital mission work. And we were talking
mm,
about what would that look like. And he was describing to me, he's like, I don't think that I would be a good YouTuber. I'm not very charismatic and I don't talk well kind of on the fly. And I'm like, yeah, that's totally fine. I'm not trying to say everybody should do this. And we're taking kind of an inventory of his skill set. And he's a graphic designer, a
mm.
brilliant graphic designer. He's a good writer as well. It's like, hey, what if it was a blog? Or what if it was an Instagram profile? Like those are things that you could do significantly better than I could do because I'm not a writer and I'm also not a graphic designer. And so I was just like, hey, why don't you give that a shot instead of YouTube?
Wow, wow, that's awesome. So I guess it's more so, for those who may be trying to figure out what they want to do in life. There's a lot of people listening who are in college. I guess part of it then is kind of what you're saying is kind of figuring out, what your strengths are and what would work best for you then kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, God has created every single one of us as an individual, right? And so if we're going to pay homage to what God has created us to do, then we should probably like take an assessment of, what is it? What am I wired to do? What comes naturally? What is something that I do that feels easy that other people might not look at and say, man, that is easy. So for me, it happens to be talking, that actually is something that I'm decently good at. It feels easy when I do it. And like when I look at someone like, say, my wife, for example, if she
Mhm.
has to talk at church or she actually just filmed her very first YouTube video that she shot and edited herself, which was exciting to
Wow,
see.
wow.
For
Yeah.
her, like it's this entire process of working her nerves up and feeling stressed out and yada, yada, yada.
Mm,
Whereas for
mm,
me, relatively, it's easy. It's something that I
mm,
enjoy doing that I feel is somewhat natural. And so that's why for
mm.
me, this medium just kind of makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes sense. That's awesome. So speaking of you and Emily, you guys are so cute. I love watching the videos that you guys make. Like seriously, you guys are so, so great. One of the videos I saw that you guys made, talking about how you two met, I thought that was such a great story. For those who are listening who may be single right now, for that season in life, what kind of would you share with them some encouraging words, because some people they don't want to be single, so what would you share for that?
Yeah, and being single can suck a lot of the times. I understand that experience deeply. I was married at the age of 25, and so pretty much from the age of what is it? I mean, 15 or so, I was kind of thinking about relationships quite a bit, thinking about my future wife and all these things. And so I understand what it's like to feel anxious. I understand what it's like to be discontent. And so
Mm,
that's a very real challenge. And so I don't want to like discount that by any stretch of the
mhm,
imagination.
mhm,
I read somewhere on Twitter recently that, how did it work? God gave Moses a promise and it wasn't fulfilled till like 40 years later or something like that. Now, hopefully
mm,
you don't have to wait 40 years, but I think what the point of the tweet
mhm,
was, it's like, there oftentimes is a distance between when God gives you a promise or puts something on your heart to the fulfillment of that thing. There's a
mm,
season in between. And I'd like to think that that season is intentional. It's not just an accident. That there's perhaps something that you could learn. Perhaps there's something that you could grow in that prepares you for that thing that God is leading you to. And as I reflect on how my relationship with Emily developed, like that's definitely the case. And so when I first met Emily, we hit things off really, really, really well. We actually met at a speed dating event in
oh
Loma Linda,
wow,
California. Yeah, so
yeah.
I was doing some ministry in Loma Linda. I was actually preaching an evangelistic series. I know that's a very weird way to meet women.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, but I was preaching an evangelistic series, and she was doing her practicum for her master's program. She's an occupational therapist in the same city. And so she ended up coming to the meetings and seeing me from a distance. And for those who can't tell by the tone of my voice, I am Asian, Filipino Chinese. And so she sees me up there and she's like, wow, this guy's kind of interesting. Like, he's moderately attractive. I don't know what language she would use to describe that. But she thought to herself, you know what? He's Asian. So even though he looks young, he's probably like 40 years old, has 3 kids already or something like that.
Okay.
And so while she registered the thought of who I was, like there wasn't really anything that happened until a couple months later, where we were in Loma Linda at the university church. They were doing something for their young adults, and there was a speed dating event. Both of us found ourselves at that event, and she recognized me from across the room, ran over, sat down, and we hit it off. And so from that day, 365 days later, we were saying I do up in the Northwest at the church that she had been born and raised in. And so like our journey was super fast, but the reason why it was super fast was because we connected on so many different levels, like spiritually, emotionally, just like everything seemed to be perfectly in line for us to just realize that this was perhaps who we wanted to spend our lives with. And when I think about the journey of my life leading up to that moment, even if I were to think about just 6 months prior to that moment of meeting her, I was in a very different place in my life. God was doing things in my life to grow me and to challenge my way of thinking, et cetera, where had I met Emily literally just 6 months earlier, I would have not been interested in her at all. And the same thing actually is true for her. Emily would say the same thing, that 6 months prior to meeting me, she would not even be in a position where she was interested either. And so that interim point, that waiting period, there was a purpose there, that God was trying to grow us and change us. And so being open to that journey enabled us to be open to meeting each other at the right time. And so if you're one of these people that's struggling to find that special someone, well, maybe for a season, stop focusing on finding that special someone and focus on what God is trying to do in your heart and in your life, and focus maybe on growing in some tangible way.
Wow, yeah, no, that's really good. I think that's so true for so many people, where you can get so focused on, yourself, and you're like, wow, like, I want to be in a relationship like right now, but maybe, God is trying to, work on your heart and teach you something, so that's really, really great. So, the next question I have, so your YouTube channel, it's, faith-based, Bible-based. Are there any, I guess, challenges that maybe you have faced having that genre of a channel, or maybe not?
Not really. I mean, there are challenges to anything, no doubt, but I don't think it's a challenge that's perhaps unique to running a faith-based channel. I think it's all the same kind of channel, discouragement and trying to struggle to find, to get people to pay attention, coming up with new ideas, staying consistent, yada, yada, yada. But like certainly nothing that's unique to being a faith-based channel versus say a tech channel or a beauty channel or a family channel or whatever the case is.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I wasn't quite sure. And the other thing I was wondering, what are some of the positive, highlights of having a faith-based, channel?
Well, I guess the positive is that my channel quite literally is just me living out my life. And so I don't feel like I'm working when I'm working, which is really awesome. Something that's very important to me is, thinking about spiritual things and reflecting on those and trying to grow from them and sharing that experience with other people. And so, I mean, that's kind of something that I would be doing anyways. I'm thinking about today, and what does today look like? It's 8:30 in the morning as we're recording this podcast. And, my plan today is to meet up with a buddy, just to go and hang out for a cup of coffee or something along those lines, and just to catch up and to do life and to see what is God doing in your life, and to share some stories from my life and kind of what I see God doing as well. And like, that's just a really fun conversation to have, in general, for me at least. And it's just kind of cool that that's the career that I've kind of built for myself, is around those types of conversations. I'll give you an example. Last week I was in need of a haircut. I've actually been in need of a haircut for like a month or so. But the person I usually get my haircut from, for whatever reason, she's been booked. Like every time that I have a spare moment to try and schedule something, she's been booked, or she's been out of state, or whatever the case is. And so finally I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to take a risk, find a new barber shop, find a new barber, and just give it a go. And so I Google a random spot near me, call them. They're like, yeah, Chico's available. Okay, cool. Chico, let's do it. And so I walk into the barbershop maybe 20 minutes later, and I start talking with Chico. And as I'm getting my haircut, Chico's obviously asking, so what do you do? And all these things. And I share with him what I do. And he's like, wow, that's really interesting. And over the course of this, 30 minutes or 45 minutes that we're talking, he begins to open up and share his story with me. Now, Chico grew up in a nominally religious home, the kind that does like Christmas and Easter, going to church, and that's about it. His family was a very tumultuous family. His parents were alcoholics. There was abuse in the family. So naturally, he's like, screw religion. I'm not going to pay any attention to this. I'm going to do my own thing. And so I'm guessing around the high school age or college age or whatever it is, he ends up getting, he gets rounded up with the wrong group of people. He joins a gang and starts doing some shady stuff. Eventually gets sent to prison because he gets caught selling drugs to the FBI, which is like, apparently that's definitely not something that you want to do, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's in prison, sentenced 5 years, and he's sent to solitary confinement because the prison is trying to protect him, because none of his gang is present in this prison, and there's a lot of other competing gangs, and if you know anything about prison life, you could die. And so they're like, well, we're going to stick you in solitary confinement to protect you. And so as he's in this solitary confinement, he's depressed, he's discouraged, feeling lower than ever before. And it's in this moment that he starts to pray. And as he's praying to whatever God is out there, just reaching out, calling out for help, he has this insane moment of peace, like this tranquility just comes over him, like this, something changes, and he has like this inner sense of light, and he's using these language to describe this experience. He's like, in the prison, in solitary confinement, I've never felt more at peace with my life ever. And so he's sharing this experience with me, and like, I'm just enthralled at what's going on. He says, I serve my time, I eventually get out of prison, and I'm searching and I'm looking for answers. I'm trying to discover what was that, and how do I like kind of figure that thing out? So he ends up in Iquitos, Peru. Oddly enough, I've been to Iquitos, Peru on a mission trip when I was in high school, so we connected over that. He says, I was somewhere on the Amazon in some like indigenous tribe kind of a thing, drinking this drink. Now, I forget the name of the drink. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's this local beverage that causes you to hallucinate. And so he's doing this like shaman ritual. I'm sure there's like chanting and music. There's probably a fire, at least in my mind's eye. This is how it all plays out. He drinks this drink and starts to hallucinate. And as he's hallucinating, he tells me that he sees Jesus, that Jesus appears to him in this vision. And Jesus is shining light. He's bright, and he's just like sitting there. And his hand is up in front of his chest, much like you see in like the Catholic depictions of Jesus. It's kind of like this blessing figure. Right. And so he's got his hand up. Jesus has got his hand up, and there's this light emitting from him. And then Chico looks down and he sees himself, and he realizes that he's mirroring the posture of Jesus. And in that moment, the two figures merge and become one. And as the two figures merge and become one, he has this exact same experience that he had in the prison. He's filled with this just overwhelming sense of joy and peace. He knows that everything's going to be all right. And he makes this connection to this experience while he's hallucinating on this drink in the river, or in the Amazon River in Peru, the same experience that he had in solitary confinement in prison. And it's in this moment that Chico tells me he realizes, wow, there really is a God. There really is something out there. And Jesus very well could be perhaps part of the solution, or part of the answer, part of the way to experience this again. And so he's sharing this experience with me, and I'm just like floored. I'm like, dude, this is so cool. Like, this is amazing. I'm just affirming. I'm like, bro, that's such an amazing story. I love it. And here I am. I'm just getting my haircut, right?
Yeah. Wow.
But to me, like, that is like the kind of conversation I want to have every day. And now, like, having a YouTube channel, like, that is my work. Like, that haircut, that's the job. Like, that's the point of it all. And so we exchanged numbers because we're both like freaking out about how cool this exchange was. Not only was I appreciative of the conversation, but throughout that, he was like, dude, we need to talk more. I'd love to hear your story and to share my story more. And so we ended up going out to lunch the next couple of days, and we're just like building this friendship that's based around a haircut. And I don't know where it goes. I don't know the whole point of it. I don't know what God's trying to do with it. But I know that this is a person that I'd like to spend more time with. And thanks to having this YouTube channel, thanks to I'm actually trying to start a podcast. I told Chico, I was like, dude, I love your story. I want to know more of it, and I want to share that story with other people. Would you be open to being interviewed? And he's like, yeah, totally. And so we haven't done the interview yet, but like that's what I get to do for work, and I think that's freaking amazing.
Oh, for sure. That's incredible. Like the fact that you just went in for a haircut and then you get that incredible story and now a friendship, like that's amazing, and how it's pretty much based around, what you do for your work. Like that's incredible. I love those types of experiences too. The least expected, it just kind of happens out of nowhere, and you meet someone so amazing and hear, an incredible story from them. Thank you for sharing that. That's really, really
Absolutely
awesome. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to hearing that interview now on your podcast.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So leading into another question here. So, the passage in the Bible where it talks about, walk by faith, not by sight. Is there a time recently or even just, throughout your life where you felt like you really had to claim, that passage to walk by faith? Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a daily experience. Like quite literally this morning, that was the kind of the topic of conversation that we were having with my wife and I as we're like doing family worship this morning. It's like, I have no clue where this thing is going. Like, obviously I have dreams and hopes for this whole online ministry and like all these different things that I'm trying to build or whatever the case is. But the very real sense is I have no clue where it's going. I have even no clue that it's actually going to be successful. Like I've reached a modest type of success up to this point, but who knows? Tomorrow something could happen and this whole thing just blows up and it's done. Like I actually don't know. And that's kind of one of the exciting things and one of the scary things about, I guess, just setting out and doing the non-traditional pathway. Who knows? Like this whole thing could just blow up in my face, and then tomorrow I need to find a new job or something like that. And so there's a very real sense that I could feel discouraged, I could feel anxious or scared, and certain days that definitely is my experience. But in those moments, I'm challenged to think like, well, why am I doing this? Is this something that I'm just doing for myself? Is this like a vanity thing? Or is this perhaps something bigger than that? And when I think about it, it's like, God told me to do this. And so I'm just trusting. I mean, I have no clue what's going to happen with it all. I don't know what the road looks like. Is this something that I only do for 5 years? Is it something I do for 10? Do I do this for 15 years? And then it's done. And then what? Because all my experience will be in this non-traditional thing. Like, would I ever be able to find a job after this? And these are all the kinds of questions that I could be focusing on, but I just choose to not stress out about that. I choose to walk by faith and not by sight, not by my feelings. And so I'm just hanging on, going along for the ride, and it's been quite the journey so far.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it can be so hard sometimes to really trust God when you're not sure what the future holds, And I think that's a real thing that a lot of people struggle with. And that leads me actually into my next question of, what words of encouragement do you have for those listening who may be struggling, in their walk with God and trying to figure out this whole faith thing? How can I trust God if, all these bad things are happening? Or how can I trust God if, I'm not sure of my future? What would you share to them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I guess, a couple things. The first thing I would say is, hey, it gets easier. The more that you practice and the more that you do this, like it actually does get easier to trust God. Maybe initially it's hard to trust God, but it does get easier. And it's mainly because I look at faith like this. I look at faith like a muscle. If you haven't worked out before and then you try and do a workout, like you're going to be hurting because your body is just not used to it. Like you've expended energy above and beyond what you're used to. And if you stay that course and you consistently put the time in, like it gets easier, like because you grow from it. And so like message one, it gets easier. Message number two, struggle is not bad. struggle is actually a good thing. Struggle is the way that God builds your faith. I mean, again, look at it like a muscle. If you're going to the gym and you're doing the bench press with a broom and it's no struggle, it's not hard, guess what? Do you ever get stronger? Do you ever grow from it? Well, obviously the answer is no. The only way that you grow, the only way that you develop character or strength or whatever that thing is that you're trying to build is if you struggle. Struggle is not something to be avoided. Struggle is something to be embraced, because struggle is the way that God builds you to be the person, to be the man or woman that he's called you to be. And so a lot of times we pray, God, make me into this kind of a person. Help me to accomplish these things. And then when God begins answering these prayers by introducing you to challenges and giving you access to struggle, we're like, God, why did you forsake me? And God's like, well, hold on. You prayed for this. You asked for me to build you. How do you think I'm supposed to build you if not through struggle? So struggle gets easier, but also number two, struggle's not a bad thing. Embrace the struggle. Realize that struggle is the way that God answers your prayers.
Yeah, that's really good. And I remember one time I prayed, I was like, hey, God, like, grow my faith. And I was like in high school, right? Like, grow my faith. Little did I know
Yeah, that's
that,
a scary thing to pray.
yeah, and stuff started happening, bad stuff, hard stuff, I
If
was
you
like,
don't mind me asking, what happened?
oh man, well, a few things. I was in high school and I prayed that prayer, and then I was really struggling with some of my friendships, and then I started struggling with a few different personal issues, and then my grandmother passed away, and just so many different things, to the point where I actually became suicidal, which many people wouldn't really know about me, because and this isn't current, this is in high school, right? But it was really bad. And I remember I was like, oh wow, like I prayed that prayer, to have faith, and there I was, kind of, trying to do life on my own. And that's when I
Yeah.
realized, I was like, oh shoot, like I shouldn't be trying to, just do this by myself. I was like, I prayed that prayer, I need to be leaning on God. I need to, be growing closer to him, and things started to change, and I felt like the more that I learned to depend on him, um, the better I felt, the more peace I felt. I felt this comfort from God, and then I wasn't suicidal anymore. I just felt like God took that, from me, and he encouraged me, he lifted me up through different people, and through his word. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the gist of that experience. So I think that's so true, like you're saying, that struggle isn't a bad thing,
Yeah.
necessarily,
Yeah,
so
I love it. Thanks for sharing that story. I think that a lot of people can relate with that. Incidentally, one of the greatest seasons of growth for me personally was actually going through something very similar as to you.
mm,
I just gotten married, moved across the country to Philly, started this new job, and about a year into this, I have this like massive bout with depression,
mm,
and that depression lasted almost a year, where it was really crippling. And I'm
mm,
not the kind of person who's very like in touch with his feelings. I'm a very type A driven kind of a person. I'm the
mm,
firstborn of a culturally Chinese family. And so like you don't pay attention to feelings. You just do things, right? And like it's like suck it up, be a man kind of a thing. And that's
mm,
kind of how I approached life for so long. But then I'm hit with this crippling, like seriously crippling depression, and my whole world kind of explodes. And
mm,
yet, it's in that specific season that I experienced the most growth. And that was not a short season. It felt like forever. I'm sure it felt like
mhm,
forever even more for my wife, who was a person who I leaned on to support me in all of these different
mhm,
things. But as I look back on it, that is one of the biggest seasons of growth. It's one of the biggest seasons in which I really feel like I learned something about myself and learned something about what it's like to trust God for reals. And
mm,
so, yeah, like I totally agree with what you're saying about that whole thing, like the whole suicidal,
mm,
depression, mental illness
mhm.
thing. Like, there's a lot there that you can actually
Yeah,
really learn from.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, Justin, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been really great. You've shared some really great advice and encouragement for everyone listening. So where can we, find you on social media if people want to keep up with you?
Thanks. Yeah, for sure. You can just type in YouTube that Christian vlogger if you're interested in my YouTube videos. Though that channel is largely based on Christianity and faith. I do a lot of frequently asked questions about the Bible, tips for growing, things along those lines. Be on the lookout. I'll be launching a podcast in the next couple of months. I guess it depends on when this episode airs, but in the spring of 2019, I'm hoping to launch a podcast. And if you want to hear more about the story of Chico, I am definitely planning on inviting him on as a guest as well. And then Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at jkhoe, Jkhoe, which could be read as just kidding ho, but it's J and Khoe, which is my last name. So unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Justin.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Rachel. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in for another episode here. I just love that conversation with Justin. I hope you did too. And be sure to tune in next time. Follow me on Instagram at Preacher Girl Podcast to know the latest of when I'm going to be putting out an episode and just seeing what a day looks like for me. You know, I'm always posting something new or crazy. So go follow me there. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. I would really appreciate that. And leave a review if you would like. That would mean the world to me. And share this podcast on social media, wherever you would like. That would be awesome too. Okay, guys, have a great rest of your day.